This is my daughter, Alina. My only child. He said it with such pride, like it was truth carved in stone. But my daughters, my twin girls, were standing right there. That moment, those 8 words, split something open in me that I didn't know still needed breaking. My breath caught, my vision blurred. I felt Lyra's tiny hand tighten in mine, and Saren's eyes, so much like his, looked up at me with quiet confusion. They didn't know what had just happened, but I did. I knew that the man standing under that spotlight, the man who once held my heart with gentle hands, had just erased them from his story. And he didn't even know it. God, please give strength to every woman watching this who's ever had to carry the truth alone. May your grace remind her she was never invisible. Not to you. If you're here, listening to this, maybe you've loved someone who walked away without looking back. Maybe you've held a secret too heavy for your heart, but too sacred to share. Or maybe you've just wondered what it's like when life circles back in ways you never expected, and demands answers you're not ready to give. Before we unravel this twisty tale of lost love, hidden daughters, and second chances, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this only get better from here. What would you do if the man you once loved, the man who disappeared into a world of billion-dollar empires and private jets, stood in front of a crowd and introduced a little girl as his only child? What if your daughters were watching? What if those daughters were his? And what if the truth you'd spent 8 years protecting finally came, face to face with the very man you never thought you'd see again? It was supposed to be a quiet evening, a chance to read from my new book, smile politely, sip something sparkling, go home. I wore a dress my sister loaned me, the zipper held by prayers and pins. My heels pinched so badly I walked like I owed the floor an apology, but I came anyway. For the sake of my girls, for the story that found its way into children's hands, for myself. Though I rarely said that out loud, we were near the back of the room, Lyra and Saren whispering to each other, giggling in that private language only twins understand. The scent of roasted vegetables and wood polish hung in the air. Strangers made polite conversation over polished cutlery and museum lighting. I was lost in it, until the crowd shifted. He stepped onto the stage, taller than I remembered, but still carrying that same calm power in his shoulders. His voice cut through the air like silk over glass. Polished, practiced, unapologetically certain. And then he said it. This is my daughter, Alina. My only child. I didn't blink, didn't move, but everything inside me screamed. My daughters stood beside me, dressed in their best, their curls wild, their hearts wide open, their entire world built on bedtime stories, backyard adventures, and the belief that one day they might know where they came from. And there he stood, unaware or unwilling. 8 years ago, I made a choice. I told myself I was protecting them. I told myself that silence was strength, that we were enough on our own. But the truth, I was afraid. Afraid he wouldn't care. Afraid he'd forgotten me as quickly as he'd chased his empire. I kept the truth buried beneath baby blankets and birthday candles. But the past has a cruel way of arriving without warning, uninvited, unapologetic, and right on time. My hand tightened around the girls, as if holding them closer could somehow shield them from a truth they weren't old enough to understand. Lyra glanced up first, her bold, curious eyes searching my face. "Mom," she whispered. Why did he say that? Saren stayed quiet, but her fingers trembled inside my palm. She always felt things deeper, and in that moment, she felt me. I swallowed hard. The polished room seemed to tilt. Applause echoed in the distance, but it felt muffled, distant, like a world I didn't belong to anymore. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Because how do you explain to your children that the man smiling under the bright lights, the man who once promised you forever in a cramped college library, the man who held your future in the warmth of his voice, doesn't even know they exist? A part of me wanted to run. A part of me wanted to scream his name until his polished composure cracked. A part of me wanted to disappear into the floor and reemerge somewhere safer, somewhere where choices didn't come back like this. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, heart racing, watching the man who unknowingly fathered 2 beautiful girls stand in front of a room full of admirers, unaware of the truth, only feet away from him. I thought of the nights I stayed awake with colicky babies, wishing someone would knock on the door and tell me I wasn't alone. I thought of the mornings when two little faces climbed into my bed before the sun touched the curtains, asking why other kids had dads at school events. I thought of how many times I'd rehearsed the words. He was someone I loved once, someone who left before he knew, but I never spoke them out loud. Now, that silence had a cost, and I could feel it pressing against my throat, begging to be released. My daughters leaned into me, unaware that the world had just shifted beneath our feet. The truth was no longer sleeping quietly in our little Oregon home. It was standing on a stage, wearing a tailored suit, introducing a child, while two more waited for their turn to be acknowledged. This was the moment everything began to change. The moment the past came back, not gently, but undeniably. And I realized something. No matter how hard I tried to keep the truth buried, life had just decided it was time. Before he became a headline, he was just a boy who loved books. We met at a second-hand bookstore 2 blocks off campus. He was tucked in the philosophy aisle, crouched down, reading a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius with his brows furrowed, like he was searching for something deeper than answers. I was there for the poetry shelf. He glanced up when I walked past. I smiled first. "You're not leaving without a Neruda collection, are you?" I teased. He blinked, then laughed, a real laugh, low and warm. "Only if you promise not to judge me for this." He held up a thick business theory book, wrapped in a cracked cover. That was how it started, not with sparks, but with sentences. We studied in the same library after that, sat across each other under yellow desk lamps, trading quotes from our favorite authors. He liked bold thinkers. I liked soft ones. We met in the middle, somewhere between chaos and quiet. His name back then didn't come with weight. He was just Rowan. That's what everyone called him, last name only. He didn't mind, said it made him feel like he hadn't been fully formed yet. We weren't fast. We were slow and deep, like steeping tea. On Saturday mornings, we walked down to the river with bagels and black coffee. He'd read aloud from whatever book he was holding that week, and I'd write lines of poetry on paper napkins with a pencil I always kept behind my ear. One afternoon, he pointed to one of my poems and said, "You feel too much. That's why people will read you." I stared at him, unsure whether to thank him or hide. He just smiled and kissed the corner of my mouth. We were poor, always tired, always behind on something, but we were full of hope. He'd sketch business models on the backs of receipts. I'd write poems about honey and thunderstorms and dream of teaching stories to children who'd never been told they mattered. We were two people holding a fragile future together, each pulling toward a dream neither fully understood. He wanted more. I wanted enough. And that difference, though quiet at first, started humming louder. I remember the first time I noticed he was pulling away. It was during finals. We'd promised each other a night off, just the two of us, the riverbank, and the last warmth of spring before the Oregon air turned sharp again. I brought sandwiches. He brought his laptop. "I just need to send one more email," he said, without looking up. I sat beside him for 23 minutes. I counted. Then I got up and walked home without saying a word. The next morning there were daisies on my windowsill and a note, "Forgive me." I forget how to pause sometimes. He was still good, still gentle, but something inside him had shifted, an urgency that wasn't there before. A hunger. He started talking about cities, venture meetings, early seed rounds, a project he was building with 3 roommates in their garage that could change everything. I was happy for him. I was. But slowly, the things we shared began to shrink. We stopped reading together, stopped walking. His hands, once ink-smudged from my poems, were now stained with ambition. He spoke in future tense. I still lived in the now. I got accepted into a graduate program for education. He didn't come to the ceremony. He sent flowers instead. "Only for now," he said, when I asked if he was leaving for good. "Let me just build this thing. Let me get it off the ground. I'll come back when there's room for breathing." I smiled for him. I always did. But I cried into my pillow that night, because I knew, deep down, he wasn't coming back. Not the same version anyway. We said goodbye on a sidewalk shaded by old trees. He hugged me like he was trying to remember the shape of me, even as he let go. "Don't stop writing," he whispered. I wanted to say, "Don't stop loving me," but I didn't. I watched him disappear into the back of a rideshare, suitcase in hand, laptop on his lap, already halfway gone. Have you ever loved someone who chased dreams more than you? Comment below if ambition ever came between you and someone you loved. Your story matters here. We arrived just after sunset. The air held that rare calm only certain cities know, restless, yet waiting. I remember thinking how strange it was to be nervous over something as simple as a reading, but I was. The invitation had come unexpectedly, an event meant to honor authors who had contributed to literacy outreach. My book had made its way into a few school libraries and reading circles, enough to earn me a nod, not enough to think I'd run into him. Lyra and Saren twirled in their matching dresses, their laughter cutting through my nerves. I had curled their hair myself. Saren had worn her sparkly shoes. Lyra insisted on the ones that squeaked with every step. My sister had zipped me into her emerald dress, muttering blessings under her breath. "Just enjoy tonight," she said. "You deserve it." I had no idea what was waiting inside. The room was wide and full of light, the kind that flattered everything but the truth. Smiling faces, soft music, polished decor. Someone handed me a name tag I didn't want to wear. We took our place near the back. I held the girls' hands as they sat beside me, fidgeting, whispering. I reminded them to be still. They promised, then immediately forgot. A woman I barely knew gave a kind introduction. I smiled politely, answered questions, nodded when someone complimented my work. I kept scanning the room, though I didn't know why. He wasn't supposed to be here. And then everything shifted. The lights dimmed slightly. A hush swept through the space. Heads turned toward the side entrance. He walked in like the room belonged to him. Not with arrogance, but with that same certainty he'd always had. The kind that says, "I know who I am, and so do you." He wore dark slacks, a crisp white shirt, no tie. Simpler than I expected. Sharper, more refined in ways that had nothing to do with money. He was older, but not by much. The years had only added weight to him, substance. There was something slower in his steps, but no less deliberate. I froze. The sounds around me faded. Conversations blurred. The girls' voices dulled. He was here. My mind spun. Why? How? Does he see me? He didn't. Not at first. He spoke briefly to the host, gave a modest smile to a few familiar faces. She appeared. A little girl. Curly hair. Maybe 10. Shy posture. Holding his hand. My stomach clenched before I understood why. He took the stage calmly, thanked everyone for attending, spoke about literacy, childhood, legacy. I should have listened to the words, but I didn't hear them. I only heard the moment everything changed. "This is my daughter, Alina, my only child." The words landed like a slap. Not loud, not harsh, just final. There wasn't a crash, no gasp, no sudden spotlight swinging in my direction. Just stillness, an awful, unrelenting stillness inside me, like my body had forgotten how to breathe. His voice continued, steady and proud, as he spoke about mentorship and children's futures. The room gave warm applause, but none of it touched me. Because my daughters, his daughters, were seated beside me, fingers tangled in mine, quietly swinging their feet. Saren looked up. "Mama," she whispered. Lyra frowned, her mouth twisting, trying to make sense of something she couldn't name. They didn't understand what he'd said. Not yet. But I did. I understood everything. I looked at them, at the curls we struggled to comb each morning, at the dimples they got from him, at the way their eyebrows arched the exact same way when they were curious. And he had no idea. Or maybe he did. Maybe somewhere inside, he felt it. Maybe that's why his eyes kept drifting toward the back of the room, toward us, after the applause. But he didn't stop. He didn't blink. He didn't waver. Just stood there, one hand resting gently on the shoulder of the girl beside him. Only child. The words refused to let go. I could have stayed. I could have waited until the speeches ended and the conversations moved on. But I knew myself too well. I knew the tears that would come. The questions from the girls. The tightness in my chest that might break loose if I stayed 1 minute longer. So I did what mothers do. I chose my children. I leaned close and whispered, "We're leaving now." They didn't argue. Lyra held my hand. Saren wrapped both arms around my waist. We slipped out the side door like shadows, quiet, unseen. The hallway outside was empty. The sound of chatter and clinking glass muffled behind thick walls. Once outside, I exhaled. It came out like a sob I hadn't meant to release. I crouched to fix Saren's collar. She looked at me with soft eyes. Did we do something wrong? No, I said quickly, pulling her close. No, my love, not at all. Lyra's voice cut sharper. Why did he say that? I didn't have an answer that would make sense. Not to them, not even to me. But in that moment, I felt something stir in my chest, part fury, part grief, part the thing I had buried 8 years ago and prayed would stay gone. He hadn't just erased me, he erased them. And no matter how carefully I'd guarded the truth, it was standing at the door now, demanding to be let in. I held both my daughters close, kissed their foreheads, and guided them to the car. In the driver's seat, I sat motionless for a long time, fingers curled tightly around the steering wheel. I thought of the nights I'd paced with fevers, the school plays where other kids ran to their fathers after the curtain call, the birthdays with empty chairs. All of it rushed back like a tide I could no longer hold back. He didn't know about them, but he would, because some truths don't stay buried. Some truths wait for the right moment, and that moment had just arrived, dressed in a white shirt, holding another child, his hand, and speaking words he didn't know would shatter something sacred. That night, I didn't sleep. I tucked my daughters into bed, watched them breathe, and sat at the kitchen table long after midnight. The email arrived the next morning. Subject line, "Are they mine?" The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I watched the digital clock crawl past midnight, then 2, then 4. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing on that stage with that child, declaring her as his world, oblivious to mine. I sat at the edge of my bed, the sheets twisted from too many failed attempts to sleep. The room felt too still, like even the walls were waiting for me to decide what came next. In the hallway, a soft snore from Lyra. Saren murmured something in her sleep, curled in her favorite blanket. They had no idea what war was unraveling inside me. Should I have told him years ago? Was I right to protect them from the mess of it all? Or did I let fear win? I stood by the kitchen window, arms wrapped around myself. The light above the sink hummed faintly. I'd stood in that exact spot countless nights, sick toddlers, late deadlines, broken hearts. But none of those nights felt like this, because this night, the past had shown up wearing a name tag and shaken everything loose. My phone buzzed on the counter. 4:17 a.m. One new email. The subject line stopped my breath. Are they mine? I stared at it. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. The words were simple, almost too soft for what they carried. But the moment they landed in my inbox, they changed everything. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, holding the phone like it might burn me. He knew, or at least, he suspected. Maybe it was my face in the crowd, or the way the girls looked at him, or something instinctual, something only a parent can feel deep in their bones even when logic hasn't caught up. My heart pounded, not just from shock, but from a deeper ache. The ache of being seen after so long, but not fully. Not yet. What would I say? What did he deserve? What did they deserve? I placed the phone down and stepped back, because some questions don't ask for answers, they ask for courage, and I didn't know if I had any left. I didn't answer the email that day. I took the girls to school like nothing had changed, packed their lunches, braided their hair, reminded them to be kind and curious. I smiled when Saren asked if she could wear her purple socks for luck. I laughed when Lyra begged to bring a rock she swore was magical. But beneath the rhythm of routine, I was unraveling. Quietly, deliberately, because truth doesn't just arrive. It waits at the door until you're brave enough to open it. And I wasn't, not yet. That afternoon, I sat at my desk, the email still unopened. I clicked it once, then again. I read his name in the corner, the timestamp, the subject line, just 3 words. Are they mine? No greetings, no punctuation, nothing flowery, just a question carved with restraint and maybe, just maybe, a crack of hope. I thought of every version of myself that had existed since the day I found out I was pregnant. The girl who stared at 2 pink lines in a bathroom stall. The woman who wrote baby names in the margins of library books. The mother who whispered bedtime stories to 2 little girls with his eyes. She carried the secret for 8 years. And now, the weight of it had shifted. I picked up my phone and typed 4 different replies. 1. This isn't the right time. Too vague. Too cowardly. 2. We're doing fine without you. Too bitter. And not entirely true. 3. They're mine. That's what matters. Too proud. Too painful. 4. I tried once. You never look back. Too loaded. I deleted them all. The truth wasn't in the details. Not yet. It was in the simplicity. So I took a breath, closed my eyes, and typed a single word. Yes. Then I hit send. The moment it left my screen, something inside me shifted. Not relief, not regret, just stillness. A deep, anchored stillness, like something buried had finally surfaced. Not in anger, not in shame, but in truth. And truth, no matter how long it takes, always changes everything. He showed up on a Tuesday. No driver, no press, no curated entourage. Just him, standing on the edge of my porch in jeans and a slate gray sweater, holding nothing but a folded note in one hand. The girls weren't home. Thank God. I needed this moment without them, without their wide eyes, without their questions. He didn't knock. He waited. From the window I watched him. Older now, yes, but not in a worn way. More lived in, quieter. There was a heaviness in the way he stood, like he had finally slowed down long enough to feel what he'd missed. I opened the door slowly. His eyes met mine. The same ones. Still searching. Still restless. But now there was something else behind them. Uncertainty. "Hi," he said. Voice low. Familiar. "Hi," I replied, barely above a whisper. We stood there for a breath longer than necessary. Just looking. I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked past me slowly, taking in the space. The framed finger paintings. The dish rack. The soft hum of the old refrigerator. My small, simple kitchen with the chipped tile he used to sit on during study breaks. He lingered near the counter. His hand brushed the ceramic coffee jar I kept next to the stove. "I remember this," he said softly. "You always hated sugar in your coffee, and you always added too much." He smiled faintly. "Still do." I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, guard halfway up. "You didn't write back." I didn't know what to say. "You asked a question." I answered it. He nodded. "I know." Silence settled like dust in the space between us. Finally I asked, "How did you find me?" "Your book, the dedication page, your photo, the internet did the rest." "Of course." He looked down at the counter, as if trying to piece together the last 8 years on its surface. "I missed everything," he said. "Did you try to reach me?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Once, maybe twice. You were everywhere and nowhere all at once." His jaw tensed. "I didn't know. If I had. But you didn't." I wasn't angry, just tired of almosts. He looked up. "I want to understand. If you'll let me." I poured coffee out of habit, 2 mugs, like I used to when his textbooks cluttered my table and deadlines chased us both. I didn't ask if he still drank it black. I just handed him the cup. He took it without a word, holding it like it meant more than warmth. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Lyra had once spilled finger paint and Saren insisted macaroni was better eaten cold. It held stories now, small ones, quiet ones, but they were ours. He looked around slowly. "This feels like you." "It is me," I said, or at least the version that showed up when no one else did. He flinched, not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. I softened my voice. "I'm not angry anymore, Calum. I stopped being angry a long time ago." "Then what are you?" "Careful." He nodded, sipping the coffee. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was honest. We were strangers who used to know everything about each other, sitting in the space between what was and what could have been. "I always thought you'd end up in a big city," he said, "doing readings, traveling. I thought you'd forget me." "I didn't." I raised an eyebrow. "You left." "I left school. I didn't know what I was leaving behind." I studied him for a moment. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't playing the victim. He was processing, slowly, truthfully. "When I found out," he said, "when I saw them." He paused. It was like someone shook the ground under me. I looked down at my hands. They're not ashamed of not having a dad, but they've always asked. He closed his eyes briefly. What did you tell them? That you were someone I loved once. That life separated us. He blinked fast. His hand clenched around the mug. I want to do right by them. I don't know how, but I want to try. I met his gaze. This isn't about wanting. It's about being ready for what that means. He nodded again. Quiet, measured. I want to meet them, he said at last. If you'll let me. That sentence didn't echo. It landed. Firm, final, but not forced. Just real. I let his words hang in the air. I want to meet them. Not I deserve to. Not I should have known. Not even I'm sorry. Just a request. No pressure. No entitlement. I stared at him. This man I once gave my whole heart to, now asking to. Meet the two people who carry the pieces I've been holding for years. He waited. I exhaled. They're not toys, Calum. Not a reunion story for you to feel better about the past. I know that. They don't know you. They don't even know your name. I'm not asking for a shortcut. Just a chance. His voice was steady, but something cracked underneath. A raw edge that hadn't been there before. They're funny, I said, mostly to myself. Lyra's always 2 steps ahead of everyone. Saren's softer. She feels everything before she understands it. He smiled a little. Are they like you? No. They're like you. That surprised him. He tilted his head. I always hoped I'd be the kind of man a child could be proud of. That's not something you prove in one afternoon. I'm not here for one afternoon. That stopped me. My chest tightened. I don't know how this works, I admitted. I've only ever been one kind of parent. Then let me learn. There was no script for this, no guidebook for how to let the past sit at your table without inviting it to break everything again. I stood up, walked to the sink, and looked out the window. They're at school until 3. I can wait. I didn't say yes. I know. He stood too, slowly. But I'll be here if you do. He stepped onto the porch again, mug still in hand. He paused. Turned. Do you still write poetry? Sometimes. I used to love the way you ended every line like it was a secret. I didn't answer. I just closed the door gently behind him. That afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror, brushing Saren's hair, while Lyra quizzed herself on spelling words in the next room. They didn't know that everything was about to shift. I wasn't sure I did either. But the knock would come, and with it, the question I'd already answered. Yes, now, it was their turn. Would you open the door to someone who once left you behind? Let's talk about forgiveness in the comments. Someone out there might need your strength. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had. Harder than telling my parents I was pregnant. Harder than watching him walk away all those years ago. Harder than every night I cried silently in the hallway while my daughters slept peacefully. Unaware that I had chosen silence over answers. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. Their hearts. Their expectations. Their trust. I sat cross-legged on the rug in the living room. Lyra was upside down on the couch, legs tossed over the backrest. Saren was curled near my feet, hugging her stuffed rabbit. Girls, I began, my voice trembling despite the calm I rehearsed. There's something important I need to talk to you about. They both looked up, instantly alert. Kids always sense when something serious is coming. Their stillness told me they already felt it. You know how sometimes you've asked about your dad? I said gently. Saren nodded, slow and wide-eyed. Lyra sat up straighter. Yeah, but we stopped asking, 'cause it made you sad. That sentence nearly undid me. I swallowed. Well, someone reached out. Someone from a long time ago. Someone I used to care about very much. Saren tilted her head. Is he our dad? Yes. Their faces shifted. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was something more complicated. Something children shouldn't have to carry. Lyra's brows pulled together. So where has he been? Saren's voice came smaller. Does he know our names? I reached for both of their hands. He didn't know about you. Not until recently. That was my choice. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Lyra snapped. From him? No, I said quickly. From hurt, from confusion, from things I wasn't sure I could explain. Saren leaned against me. Does he love us? I paused. I think he wants to. I think he's learning how. Lyra crossed her arms. And now he just shows up and wants to be our dad? He doesn't want to rush anything. He asked to meet you, that's all. Silence. Then Saren whispered, "Can we say no?" "Of course, but I want you to think about it. Just one meeting, a walk at the park. You don't have to talk, you can just listen." They looked at each other, their silent twin language already in motion. Finally, Lyra shrugged. "One time." Saren nodded. "Okay, but if he's weird, I'm telling you." I laughed. "Fair." We chose a quiet park, familiar, safe. The kind with worn swings, faded picnic tables, and a pond that always reflected the sky just right. Lyra and Saren had fed ducks there since they were toddlers. If things felt too much, we could leave. That was the deal. He arrived first. Jeans, a soft blue shirt, no phone in hand, no watch to check, just him, standing by the sandbox, turning something small in his fingers. Maybe a pebble, maybe nerves. When the girls saw him, neither rushed forward. Lyra slowed her steps, narrowing her eyes like she was studying a stranger. Saren stayed close to my side. "Ready?" I asked. They both nodded, but only just. As we approached, he straightened, hands falling to his sides. "Hi," he said, eyes on the girls. They didn't answer at first. He crouched to their height, without being asked. "I'm Calum," he said. I'm your dad." Silence. Then Lyra, ever the bold one. "That's a weird name." He blinked, then smiled. "Yeah. It is." She folded her arms. "You don't look like a dad." "What do dads look like?" "I don't know. Older." Saren peeked at him, then looked up at me. I gave her a small nod. "I like your shirt," she said quietly. "Thank you," he said, and his voice cracked, just a little. The next hour moved slowly. At first, the girls kept their distance, hanging from the monkey bars and whispering to each other. He didn't force himself into their space. He sat at the edge of the sandbox and watched, laughed when Lyra dared Saren to climb too high, cheered softly when Saren did it anyway. And then, out of nowhere, Lyra threw a ball toward him. He caught it. Without a word, the game began. Back and forth, closer and closer. A rhythm formed. Saren joined in. Then came giggles, then hide and seek behind the trees. I sat on a bench, stunned. There it was. The bridge being built, not by explanations, but by play, by presence, by small, beautiful moments. Later we walked to the corner ice cream shop. He let them choose whatever they wanted, no restrictions. Lyra picked bubble gum. Saren went for vanilla with rainbow sprinkles. They sat on the curb, legs crossed, ice cream dripping, eyes bright. He looked at me as if asking, "Is this okay?" I nodded. When Saren finished, she leaned against him. "Thanks," she whispered. "For what?" he asked gently. "For coming." He blinked fast. "Of course." Lyra took another bite, then said, casually, like it didn't mean everything, "So, do we call you Dad now?" He looked at me, uncertain. I didn't speak. This was their choice now. He turned back to Lyra. "You can call me whatever feels right." She stared at him, then shrugged. "Dad's fine, I guess." Saren smiled, shy and soft. "Okay, Dad." He didn't cry, but I did, quietly, behind my sunglasses, because sometimes the loudest moments in life don't make a sound. It didn't happen overnight. There was no grand gesture, no sweeping announcement, just small things, layered one on top of the other, until it felt like he had always been part of the pattern. It started with Saturdays. He'd show up at 10 sharp, never early, never late, always with something in hand, a puzzle, a kite, a storybook he remembered from college. The girls would race to the door by the third weekend. Lyra made a game of guessing what surprise he'd bring. "Robot kit," she said one morning, before flinging the door open. "Told you." Calum grinned. "We'll build it together." And they did, on the living room floor, parts scattered like confetti. Lyra directing, Saren reading the manual aloud with careful seriousness. He didn't try to win them over, he just showed up. He picked them up from school once when I had a meeting. Saren's teacher emailed later. The girls seemed so proud introducing him. He didn't miss bedtime on Fridays. He read aloud in a voice that changed for every character. Lyra made him redo the funny ones. Saren always fell asleep before the ending, curled against his shoulder. I watched it all quietly, present but on the edge. I didn't know where I belonged in this new rhythm. Sometimes I'd hear laughter from the kitchen and find them baking cookies that looked like strange animal hybrids. Sometimes I'd walk into the backyard and see Calum pushing them on the swing. His tie loosened, hair out of place, eyes full of something close to peace. And sometimes on the harder nights, I'd catch him sitting at the table with Lyra, going over math problems with a patience I'd never expected from a man who once lived on deadlines. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses, missed cues, but it was consistent. That mattered most. One night, I came home late from a reading. He was in the hallway trying to braid Saren's hair while she yawned and instructed him with sleepy precision. "You're doing it backwards," she mumbled. He looked up at me, completely lost. I laughed. "It's okay. She makes me redo it too." His smile in that moment, it wasn't polished. It was real. We never said it out loud, this becoming, but it was happening. The girls began to speak of him in the present, not the past. Dad said we can plant sunflowers. Dad helped me write my essay. Dad promised to bring cinnamon rolls next time. I watched them shift, from caution to comfort. Lyra still tested boundaries, always the one to ask, "Will you really come back next week?" Saren was softer, but her eyes watched everything. She was learning to believe again. And trust, once broken, doesn't return with noise. It returns quietly. Calum was patient with them, but he was different with me. He lingered, stayed a few minutes longer each time, offered to help with dishes, sat on the porch with me after the girls had gone to bed. We didn't rush into old habits. We eased into new ones. One night, it was just the two of us at the table. The girls had fallen asleep with books in their hands, worn out from a scavenger hunt he'd created in the yard. He poured tea. I raised an eyebrow. "Still can't cook," he admitted, "but I'm learning how to heat water." I smiled. That's progress. There was a quiet between us, but it wasn't strained. It was filled with everything we hadn't said and weren't afraid to say anymore. "I missed you," he said finally. I looked down at my mug. "You miss the person I used to be." "No," he said. "I missed you. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the way your voice softens when you read something you love." I didn't answer right away, because a part of me had waited to hear those words, and another part had already stopped needing them. He leaned back. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if I had stayed?" "All the time," I said, "but wondering doesn't change what happened." "No, but it reminds me what matters now." He reached for my hand, just gently, no pressure, no demand. I didn't pull away. Not this time. Later that night after he'd left, I found a note in my kitchen drawer. A simple one, scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. "Thank you for not closing the door." I held it in my palm for a long time, unsure if I wanted to cry or smile. Maybe both. Because somewhere between broken pieces and bedtime stories, we were stitching something new together. Do you believe people can really change? Share your thoughts and don't forget to like this video if this story is tugging at your heart. Someone else might need the hope you found. He asked if we could meet her first, without the girls. "She's nervous," he said. "She's used to it being just me and her." I understood that. I honored it. We met at a quiet cafe one town over. She walked in behind him, her hand tucked lightly into the crook of his arm. Her hair curled tightly at the ends. She wore a lavender hoodie and clutched a worn book in both hands. Alina was beautiful, not in a polished way, but in that quiet, natural way some children carry without even knowing it. She looked at me like she was solving a puzzle. I smiled. "Hi, Alina. I've heard a lot about you." She didn't smile back. "Are you my dad's friend?" I glanced at Calum. He cleared his throat. "Alina, this is someone very important. Someone I cared about a long time ago. And she's the mother of your sisters." That landed like a ripple. Alina blinked. "Sisters?" "Yes," he said softly. "They're your sisters." Her grip tightened on the book. "I thought I was your only kid." His face faltered. I stepped in. "It's okay for this to feel strange. You don't have to rush to understand it." Alina sat down slowly. "So, they're younger?" 2 years younger," I said. She picked at a string on her sleeve. "Do they know about me?" "They will." "When you're ready." She nodded, but her silence stretched. Over the next week, we planned the first meeting. An afternoon in the backyard, nothing formal, just time to play, observe, exist in the same space. Lyra was excited, if a bit territorial. She better not try to take my bed, she warned. She has her own, I assured her. Saren said little, but I noticed her packing extra snacks into a bag. Just in case she likes cheese crackers, she whispered. When Alina arrived, she hovered near Calum. She said hello, but her eyes didn't meet theirs. Lyra gave a brisk nod. Saren smiled softly. Hi, I like your book. Alina clutched it tighter. Thanks. The air felt thick, like everyone was waiting for permission to relax. But it didn't come right away. It takes time for new shapes to fit, especially when hearts are involved. The tension grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across the room. No one wanted to say it first, but it lived between them, in every pause sentence, every sideways glance. Alina didn't come the following weekend. She stayed with her grandmother, Calum said. No explanation. The girls noticed. She doesn't like us, Lyra said flatly. She thinks we're here to steal him. Saren said nothing, but I saw it in her eyes. The ache of rejection disguised as understanding. When Alina returned the next weekend, things cracked. They were supposed to build a cardboard fort, something silly and sweet. But the moment Alina saw the girls measuring out plans on the garage floor, laughing, working together, sharing snacks she used to bring alone, her face tightened. She sat in the corner, arms crossed, pretending to read. Calum noticed. Alina, want to help? No. Saren tried. You can help paint the door. Alina snapped. It's not my fort. Lyra stood up. We invited you. Alina's eyes filled, but her voice hardened. You're not my sisters. Stop pretending. The words rang out louder than she meant them to. Everyone froze. Calum stood to say something, but I caught his eye and shook my head. Not now. Lyra's jaw clenched. Fine, she muttered. Don't be. She stormed off. Saren stayed still. Alina didn't cry, not right away, but she left the room quickly. That night, Calum and I stood in the kitchen, plates untouched, the air thick. She's scared, I said. He nodded. She's never had to share me. I get it. She's afraid I'll disappear again. So were they. No one wins when a heart is pulled in too many directions. But some things aren't meant to be measured. They're meant to be multiplied. The next morning, Saren found Alina in the backyard, sitting on the swing alone. She didn't say anything, just sat beside her, silent, steady. After a long pause, Saren held out a book. I brought this. It's funny. Alina looked at it, but didn't take it. Saren cracked it open and started reading anyway. Her voice soft, slow, a little shaky. By the third page, Alina giggled. Just once, but it was enough. They stayed there, reading side by side, until the sun dipped behind the fence. Later that evening, I peeked into the girls' room and froze in the doorway. All three were on the floor. Lyra was drawing. Saren was reading aloud. Alina was laughing, her head tipped back, the book in her lap. It wasn't perfect, but it was beginning. The girls were asleep, the house dim and quiet. A light hum from the heater filled the silence as I rinsed mugs in the sink. I didn't hear him at first. I always wondered what your evenings looked like. Calum leaned against the kitchen doorframe, sleeves pushed up, hair slightly tousled like the day had worn him a little thinner. I dried my hands and turned. They're calm, sometimes boring, mostly full. He stepped in. It's peaceful here. It had to be. He nodded, slowly, like he understood more than he used to. I poured the rest of the tea into 2 mugs, set one in front of him. We sat, just like we used to, knees almost touching, the silence between us not rushed to be filled. Do you hate me? He asked, after a long moment. No. He looked surprised. I did, I said, but hate is loud. I needed quiet. He ran a hand over his face. I've had years of noise. It never gave me answers. I traced the rim of my cup. Why didn't you come back, even once? His answer came slowly, like it hurt to say. I thought I had to become something first, someone big enough to deserve you. I kept chasing what I thought would earn me a seat at your table, and by the time I looked up, everything had changed. I stared at him. I never needed you to be anything but present. I know that now. Too late. Maybe not, I said, softer than I meant to. He looked at me then, not with guilt or regret, but with something deeper, longing, laced with sorrow. I missed your voice, he said. I missed the way you used to challenge me when I talked like I had all the answers. I smiled faintly. You did love being right. You loved proving me wrong. He chuckled, then grew quiet. Do you think it's possible to fix something that was left broken for this long? I looked at the table, at the hands that had built bedtime routines and packed lunches, at the face that once made promises in poetry. I think some things weren't broken, I said. They were paused, and we sat there, in the stillness of a night neither of us expected, trying to find our way back to the start. He offered to walk me to the porch, though the night air was heavy and the clouds promised more than just mist. Do you remember that bookstore we used to go to? He asked as we stepped outside. The one with the crooked shelves? I nodded. You used to leave notes inside the poetry books. He smiled. I left one for you the week before I left town, folded it into Neruda's 20 love poems. I never found it. Figures, he said quietly. I waited for a reply that never came. We stood at the top step, not saying anything, just listening to the rustle of tree branches, the hush that always comes before a change in the air. And then, a light drizzle began to fall. Gentle, steady. He looked up. I should have brought an umbrella. I stepped back toward the door, ready to call it a night, but something held me there. He didn't move either. You were always chasing the next thing, I said, almost to the wind. Even when I was right beside you. His voice dropped. I thought if I ran fast enough, I could outrun the fear of not being enough. I looked at him, really looked. His collar damp, eyes searching, heart exposed in a way he never let me see before. I don't need you to prove anything now, I said. He stepped closer. I don't have an empire anymore, not really. I have a name, a history, and 3 girls who look at me like I might still be worth the risk. You are, I whispered. We stood still, just inches between us, the soft patter of rain beginning to soak the edges of our clothes. It smelled like earth and beginnings. His fingers reached up slowly, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. I want this, he said. Not just weekends or polite conversations. I want the quiet mornings, the hard days, the grocery lists, the whole thing. I blinked away the tears. What about your company? He hesitated. Then, without flinching, he said it. You matter more. And just like that, my heart broke open. Not from pain, but from relief. He leaned in, forehead resting against mine. If you tell me it's not too late, I'll believe you. I didn't need to say anything. I closed the space between us, let my lips find his again, not with urgency, but with the softness of forgiveness. The kind that takes years to build. The headlines didn't ask, they declared. Billionaire CEO steps down unexpectedly. Rowan walks away from power. What's next for the man who built an empire? The media fed itself. Speculation churned. Was it a merger? A scandal? Burnout? A new venture? He said nothing. Not to them, anyway. But to us, he said everything. He came over that morning, his phone buzzing nonstop. He silenced it and set it face down on the counter. I've been in boardrooms for years, he said, pulling up a stool at the island. But the real questions I need to answer aren't there. The girls were eating cereal at the table, their legs swinging under their chairs. Alina added extra sugar to Saren's bowl when she thought I wasn't looking. Lyra called her out with a smirk. It was chaos. Beautiful, normal chaos. I told the board this isn't temporary, Calum said. And they believed you? I asked. They didn't want to, he said with a shrug. But they didn't need to understand. They just needed to listen. I looked at him. Are you sure? I've never been more sure. He didn't need to prove it with gestures. But he did anyway. He started walking the girls to school, took Alina to her orthodontist appointments, showed up at Lyra's spelling bee, Saren's art showcase. He volunteered to chaperone a field trip and came home exhausted but smiling. And then, he asked if he could visit my classroom. Just to read, he said. Nothing flashy. So, he came, sat on a tiny stool with a storybook in hand and a room full of wide-eyed children in front of him. He read slowly, changing his voice for each character. They giggled, clapped, begged for more. I watched from the back of the room. Quiet, moved. Because that was the moment I realized he hadn't just stepped down. He had stepped into something else entirely. Something real. Later that week, we planned a simple gathering. Nothing extravagant. Just neighbors and friends, paper plates, plastic forks, lemonade, music playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker near the porch. Calum stood by the grill, laughing with the retired couple next door. Alina was showing Lyra and Saren how to braid string bracelets. Someone's toddler ran past in a superhero cape. He caught my eye through the sliding glass door and gave a smile that said, "I'm exactly where I want to be." It happened on a golden morning, the kind where everything felt touched by peace. The breeze moved gently through the trees. Light filtered through the leaves like it knew something I didn't. The girls were still sleeping. The house was quiet. I stepped into the garden barefoot, coffee in hand. He was already there, kneeling in the soil beside the raised bed we'd planted together. Tomatoes, basil, sunflowers taller than any of us. He looked up and smiled, not the kind that asked for anything, just full. "Come here," he said softly. I walked toward him, the ground cool beneath my feet. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small and simple. A ring, nothing flashy, just a soft gold band with a single stone, round, clear, steady. "I thought I would plan something bigger," he said, "but this feels right." He held it out, but didn't rush the words. "I want to marry you, not just for the girls, not just because it's time, but because I've never known anything as right as this." My breath caught. He looked at the garden. "You planted everything in this space. You watered it. You gave it life. All I want is to keep showing up in it." I knelt with him, heart full. "Yes," I whispered, not because it was perfect, but because it was true. He didn't tell the girls right away. He wanted to ask them first. "Before I put a ring on your mom," he said, "I need your permission." They sat on the couch, arms crossed like a panel of judges. Lyra went first. "Are you going to live here?" "Yes," he said. "Like, really live here?" "Yes. No disappearing. No business trip that turns into forever." He nodded. "No disappearing." Saren reached out, touched his hand. "Okay then." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "You better not break her heart." He placed his hand over his chest. "I won't." Alina beamed. "Does that mean I get to be the flower girl?" He smiled. "If you want to." She nodded, already planning her dress in her mind. The house became a different kind of whirlwind, not the stressful kind, not the kind filled with pressure or panic, the good kind, where voices overlapped with laughter and the dining table became a chaotic canvas of fabric swatches, glue sticks, and half-eaten snacks. We decided on a small ceremony. Backyard, barefoot. Honest. The girls insisted on helping with every part of the planning. Alina made hand-drawn invitations, complete with stick figure versions of each of us. Herself holding 2 flowers, Lyra with her arms crossed, Saren reading a tiny book. "This is your mom crying," she explained, pointing to a blob with blue streaks coming from its eyes. "That's accurate," I laughed. Saren volunteered to write the vows, just in case you both forget what you're supposed to say. She even practiced them in front of the mirror, mouthing both parts. Lyra took charge of logistics. "Who's bringing chairs? What if it rains? Do we need a backup playlist?" Calum handled the food. He insisted on learning how to make my mother's cornbread recipe himself. After 3 failed attempts, he finally got it right. Flour dust on his cheek, butter in his hair, and pride glowing in his smile. The night before the wedding, we sat around the fire pit in the backyard. No rehearsal, no pressure, just us. The girls told silly stories. Calum shared a childhood memory about trying to build a treehouse and falling out before the first plank was nailed. Lyra pretended to be horrified. Alina laughed so hard she snorted. Saren leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You look really happy, Mom." I was, and not just because of the dress or the ring or the promise waiting beneath the arbor we'd wrapped in twinkle lights. I was happy because we'd earned it, because every crack had been filled with effort. Every silence had been honored. Every return had been real. Tomorrow we'd stand under that tree and say yes in front of friends and neighbors. And 3 little girls who taught us what love actually looks like. Messy, brave, true. If you had told me, all those years ago, that our story would circle back, that the man who vanished into ambition would find his way home through bedtime stories and pancake mornings, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's the thing about love. Real love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it shows up years late, holding guilt in one hand and hope in the other, asking for another chance. And sometimes we say yes, not because we've forgotten the hurt, but because healing doesn't mean pretending the pain never happened. It means choosing something better anyway. This isn't a story about flawless love. It's about brave love, the kind that breaks, mends, and then stays. The girls still ask questions. They want to know why he wasn't there for their first bike rides, why they had to wait, why life unfolded the way it did. And I don't hide the truth. We talk openly, because love is strengthened by honesty. We tell them, families don't have to look a certain way to be real, that sometimes the people who matter most are the ones who fight their way back, and when they do, we can choose to welcome them, not perfectly, but fully. Alina now introduces Lyra and Saren as her sisters. No pause, no hesitation. They bicker, they share shoes, they defend each other at school. They've braided themselves into something whole. Caleb still forgets where we keep the scissors. He burns toast more often than not, but he is present in every big and small way. And me? I no longer carry the weight of silence. I no longer wonder if I made the right choice by raising my daughters on my own for those first years. I know I did what I had to. And I also know I was never meant to carry the story alone forever. Sometimes love takes the long way home. And when it finally arrives, it asks us one quiet, powerful question. Will you let it in? And this time, I did. So when he stood on that stage and said, "This is my only child," it wasn't a lie. It was a mistake that led us back to something real, something worth everything.